Boston in the 1850s had been riven with ethnic political tension as the Irish were under attack by the Yankees. The free black community felt that it was under attack from the whites. The Republicans and the Democrats and other political factions were at odds. And with the election of Lincoln and the secession of the southern states, a lot of Democrats were blaming the Lincoln administration for precipitating this crisis, because the Lincoln administration, they thought, was obsessed with the interests of the enslaved people rather than with the interests of the Union. Then in April of 1861, the South Carolina militia fired on Fort Sumter, a fort on an island in the harbor of Charleston, South Carolina, and this provoked the war. The commander at Fort Sumter was Robert Anderson, and almost immediately after the attack, the black community on Boston's Beacon Hill moved to rename their major street Anderson Street. So Anderson Street on Beacon Hill commemorates Robert Anderson. Also in the wake of the attack on Fort Sumter, the Columbian Guards, the regiment of Irishmen led by Thomas Cass, who had been disarmed when the Know-Nothings took power in 1855, reform as the Massachusetts 9th Volunteer Regiment, an Irish regiment that is going to fight to save the Union. And as Cass and the Irish 9th march up Beacon Street, they stop at the home of Sally Otis, the widow of Harrison Gray Otis, really the First Lady of Boston, and she presents the regimental colors to the Irish regiment, a green flag with a golden harp. This is a great coming together of Boston's Yankees and Boston's Irish, both now committed to saving the Union. And Cass leads the Irish 9th to the defense of Washington, and in fact they are camping on the Arlington, Virginia plantation of Robert E. Lee. Lee now is commanding the Confederate forces. And there, these Irish men from Boston talk with the men and women held as slaves by Lee. And they come to realize that the destinies of these two races, the Irish and the African Americans, are intertwined in this republic that both are going to be fighting to save. In 1863, Massachusetts raises the first regiment of free blacks, the Massachusetts 54th Volunteer Regiment. They will see extensive action, just as the Irish 9th does. Cass had been elected to the Boston School Committee in 1860, in fact, the first Irish person to be elected to public office in Boston. Quite likely, he would have become mayor of Boston after the war. However, he is shot through the jaw at Malvern Hill in Virginia, comes back to Boston in excruciating pain, and dies about 2 weeks later. At the turn of the 20th century, his statue is placed in the Boston Public Garden. Also, the all-black Massachusetts 54th fights at Fort Wagner in South Carolina. William Carney, the master sergeant, retrieves the colors when their flag bearer is shot storming the battlements of Fort Wagner. Carney takes the flag so that it won't be captured by the enemy. He tucks it under his coat and crawls back to the Union lines, and when he gets back, he says, "The dear old flag never touched the ground." In 1900, at about the same time that Cass's statue is being placed on the public garden, Carney is awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor, the first African American to receive that distinction. So we see Boston at the beginning of the Civil War, riven, as the nation was, by ethnic political tension. During the course of the war, we see a growing unity as Bostonians, black and white, Irish and Yankee, Protestant, Catholic, Jewish, all fight to save the Union.